Hi, and welcome to Live Long, Live Well. I'm your host, Mark Maxwell. Tonight we're going to talk to a remarkable woman who battled a brain tumor for over 20 years. She endured 6 major brain surgeries and had 2 near-death experiences, all while raising a family and running a business. She fought and she survived and became a health and fitness instructor, and she's an inspiration to everyone. She wrote a book about it, Life Stinks, and Then You Live, and she's here to tell her story. Let's meet Ilene Hill.
Hi.
Ilene, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, first of all, Ilene, after your long ordeal, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I just celebrated my 5-year brain anniversary in October, 5 years brain tumor free. It's nice.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, you had a very long ordeal.
I did.
And a long fight with insurance companies and dealt with many doctors over the years. Now, you were misdiagnosed for a long time. They thought you had a certain type of cyst that was inoperable initially, and it took a while for them to find out exactly what your diagnosis was. Can you tell us about that?
I was diagnosed after the birth of my middle son. I had him. When you have tumors, they either go into remission when you're pregnant or they grow really fast. And mine kind of went into remission, and right after I delivered him in the hospital, I came down with these really severe headaches, dive-on-the-floor headaches. And so they kept me for 10 days, and they said, we're going to make you some doctor's appointments. And I think I had 14 doctor's appointments in the next month that he was home. And then they found out that I was hydrocephalic and I had a blockage. They didn't know why. They just knew I was hydrocephalic. They put me in the hospital a month later, and I had a shunt put in to relieve the pressure on my brain. So after that, they said, we're going to go back and do some extensive testing and find out just what's causing this. It was real bad. They had to drill a hole to relieve your pressure in your head, and the neurosurgeon told my husband he just had to stand back for about 5 minutes and let it drain out of my head. There was so much fluid in there. So the headaches were really bad.
Oh, bad. Now, but eventually they determined that you had a certain type of tumor that basically had it since birth, wasn't it?
Yeah, they said it was arachnoid cyst, and it was inoperable.
Right.
And they relieved the pressure. The headaches went away because my pressure was gone. And it was kind of left at that for 8 years. And my shunt failed, and I passed out. It's really weird when you have a shunt because you know it's going to give. I went in several times going, is this the symptoms? Is this what happens? And then I'd get checked out and go, nope, it's fine. And every year I had to go for an MRI. And then when it finally go, you didn't really have any symptoms. It just went. And so they put a new shunt in 8 years later. And then I started having some really bad symptoms, and they got worse and worse and worse. Double vision, falling over. I started having trouble swallowing, and it was very disruptive in my life at that point.
Now, during those years, you were seeing a neurological ophthalmologist out of Ann Arbor?
Yes, I saw neurosurgeons at Beaumont. I was sent to neurosurgeons. Right after my original surgery, my insurance company went bankrupt, and I kind of had to stay and ride that out, and another insurance company has to absorb who's left. And then I was sent to another hospital who did all new series of their tests, and he wanted me to have another shunt put in. And I went to New York at the time to see a doctor, and he said, don't have the other shunt put in. So it was just a long battle with that, and then when the symptoms started getting worse, that's when I started having the double vision, and my doctor sent me to a neurological ophthalmologist because they kept saying it wasn't the tumor's fault that I was having this double vision. It had to be something with my eyes.
I see.
So I saw several neurological ophthalmologists and was getting nowhere. And they finally sent me to Ann Arbor to U of M. And I saw the doctor there for about 3 years. And he kept saying, I think I know what this is now. I think I take this medication. Let's test your liver first. And you're going to take this medication and come back in 4 months and see me. And I would come back in 4 months, and it didn't work. And then he'd put me on another medication, and he'd go, come back in 4 months, try this. That didn't work. And I was starting to get aggravated. And so my husband said, I'm going with you to your doctor's appointment. And that's really unusual for him because he runs a business, and I always did my appointments on my own. And he went to Ann Arbor, and they would put those paddles in my eyes, and not only were my eyes double, but they jiggled. There was a word for it. And what would happen was my brain would try to overcompensate that. So when I'd look at your face, I'd see this, 2 faces. And then it'd come back together, and then it'd overcompensate. So then when I focus on something else, it'd do that. So I lived my whole life like that. It was driving me crazy. So the next time after 4 months we went in, he decided he was going to do surgery on the sides of my temples, slice them open. He was going to weaken some of the nerves and strengthen other ones and get my double vision gone. And I started having really weird thoughts about that. And I thought, why would you mess with my one eye that's good? And he said, well, I have to do both of them to join them. But I realized my eyes weren't double the same way all the time. If it was just double, but I'm like, how is he going to correct them jumping around? So I called Cleveland Clinic. And I said, I'm scheduled for surgery, and I'd like to have a second opinion because I'm not comfortable with this.
You had doubts about what
I had a lot of doubts.
Yeah.
So when they took me in 2 weeks, we drove to Cleveland, 3.5 hours. And that's when, well, I tried to get to Mayo first, and I couldn't find a vision center there. But they did have one at Cleveland. So when I went there, there was a really nice doctor. And he put my x-rays up, and he said, you either don't have what you think you have, or it's gone malignant. And he wanted to do one more test. He would schedule me to do it back here in Michigan, and he'd go from there. We were going on probably one of our last vacations with all the boys together. One was graduating from college, and we had a trip to London planned. And my envelope came from Cleveland Clinic about 3 days before we left on that vacation, and I couldn't open the envelope. I just tucked it in my drawer, and I kept walking by and looking at that drawer. We got on the plane, and I said, I'm so happy to be flying away from that envelope. My husband said, well, why don't you tell me? And I go, what good's that's going to do? I have double vision. I can't help you drive. We're going to go and have a great time. So after we got home, it still took me about 4 days to open the envelope, and it's that's what it was. Is I had an epidermoid brain tumor, and yes, it was causing my double vision.
Now, eventually, you were able to get the procedure you needed from Dr. Fukushima. And how did the insurance company did end up paying for that procedure?
They did. They were very fair at the end, but I didn't know until 3 days before I left for my surgery if, in fact, and it's over $100,000 to have brain surgery.
That's right. What did it take to convince the insurance company? Now, again, people must understand this is a long process, and it's a very expensive operation, and you had to do quite a bit of convincing to the insurance company to get this covered. And how did that happen?
The office said she would help me, and because he was so adamant that I had to get this out now. Of course, the Cleveland Clinic surgery was in January, and I had arranged to fly down in June to meet Dr. Fukushima. And my son, who was 13 at the time, he and I kind of made a little trip out of it, and we went down to meet him. And he said, yes, it's got to come out. They scheduled me for October to have it taken out. So we started writing letters. My husband wrote letters to the insurance company. That's when I called all their doctors, and I really started on a one-woman crusade. And didn't know, but I was ready at this point. I was just going to have this done. And then in August, I had a really bad headache one night, and my husband thought I had a sinus headache, so he asked the boys to let me sleep in the morning, and they all left for school and work. And I was unconscious. My shunt had failed again. So when my father finally called for the 4th time, and my 4-year-old told him I was still sleeping, he drove out. and they took me in the hospital. So I had to have a new shunt put in August, and then that one failed, and I kind of went unconscious again, and the next day they had to put another one in. So I had 2 brain surgeries in 2 different spots at that point. So I was thinking for sure that the October surgery was now off. Mm-hmm. And when we called there, they said, no, he's still planning on doing surgery. So it turned out in 2005, I had 4 brain surgeries in the same calendar year.
That's amazing. Now, at the point you had your surgery with Dr. Fukushima, your tumor had grown.
It was
epidermoid
is a very slow-growing tumor.
Slow, but it was quite a complex tumor at that point, wasn't it?
It was. It was wrapping around my 4th nerve in my brainstem, which was my optic nerve, and I was pretty much going blind. With my double vision, light really hurt my eyes. I was having trouble with my balance. I pretty much, to drive, had to shut an eye because I had to get rid of that double vision. So I didn't go but more than a mile or so from the house. So it was rough.
When you had the procedure, how long was it before you really could tell that there was a beneficial effect of that procedure?
At Duke, my double vision was gone pretty much.
So that was immediate?
It was immediate. But of course you feel like you've been run over by a Mack truck because my head's been cut open for the 4th time this year.
Yes, right.
And I've got another titanium plate with 4 more screws in it. And but I still couldn't look to my left. I couldn't have vision over here. And before I couldn't walk down a flight of stairs because I couldn't look down. And I'll never forget, he sat down on the bed, he came to see me, and I never saw a resident or an intern in that hospital. This doctor came every day, and he was the one that saw me. And he held my hand, and he said, your optic nerve has been severed. And I don't know how, and we don't know if it happened at the previous surgery. But he said, don't give up on it. Keep doing your exercises, and I've seen 6 to 9 months down the road repair themselves. And 6 months to the day, I happened to look over, and I could see something over there, and I didn't want to say anything because I didn't know if I was just seeing things. And about half hour later, I saw something, and I said to my husband, I just saw over there, and it was 6 months to the day.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it started coming back.
Yeah, that's terrific. Just have one more question before we close out this segment now. Obviously, you've had it was a 20-year plus ordeal. And you did a lot of self-advocacy during that period. What would your advice be to other people who may be in a similar circumstance?
Well, I've learned a major thing from this is you have to be your own advocate. Doctors have to see 30 patients a day for their office to run. They see you for 10 minutes, and most of the time they're writing in the book. And they're reading what they wrote last time, and they're kind of hearing you in and out. And you live with yourself every day, and you have to do your homework and not go, well, I don't feel so good. Well, write down, keep a journal. That's how they originally found my tumor. I started writing journals of when my head would flare and what would happen. And, we have to watch what we eat, and we have to watch our exercise, and that's our job, is to be our own advocate, and you have to stay with it and don't take no for an answer.
Yeah,
keep at it.
Absolutely. Well, you fought and you persevered, and it's just, so glad that you did.
It paid off.
Yes, it did.
I took a chance, and it paid off.
You bet. Well, we'll have more. We'll be back with more with Ilene Hill right after this. Hi, we're back with more with Ilene Hill, and Ilene has written a book, Life Stinks and Then You Live, and we're going to talk to her more about that. Ilene, I want to bring up a date to you, December 6, 1996, a very traumatic day in some ways in your life. You went for a visit to the dentist. They made an error in the medication they gave you a penicillin that you're allergic to, and you had a severe reaction to it. And can you tell us what happened?
I started feeling really funny in the chair, so I asked him to stop drilling. And, my mouth's all open with clips and everything, and it started coming on. And I knew because I had had that reaction before. And the dentist said, I'm sorry, it's all over your chart, because they knew I was allergic to penicillin. So knowing my hands were going to blow up like elephant trunks, I got my rings off. I had taken the 2 pills out of my pocket for later and gave them to her. And I slid down onto that chair and went into anaphylactic shock.
Did they call 911 right away?
Immediately. And called my husband, who was only about a half a mile away. So he came, and I was unconscious by the time the fire truck and the ambulance got there. I could hear. You can hear when you're unconscious.
What happened then?
Well, of course, you're violent. I mean, it's just like totally being possessed. You're shaking, and I could hear them. They were trying to get a vein in, and they couldn't, because my veins were collapsing. And so I could hear a lot of screaming, and I'd go in and out, and then finally I went. It was very peaceful, and I went to the end of the light.
Did you feel like you left your body at that point?
I didn't really see a body. I know people say sometimes they do that. I never saw my body per se, but I felt myself floating.
Did you feel like you were going to another place?
Yes.
And what did that place look like?
It was bright. All I could remember was really bright lights, and it was just, I was out of pain. There was no shaking. There was no, it was really nice, and just this feeling of this unconditional love. It was
what do you think the source of that love was?
I don't know.
Was it a feeling?
Just a feeling,
overwhelming
of
type feeling?
Nothing you'd get on this earth. Nothing you'd get here. And so it was very, I was like going, yay, you know, and I wanted to stay, and then all of a sudden I saw my grandmothers, both my grandmothers, standing there, and the one was kind of arguing me that I had to go back.
And your grandmothers were deceased?
Both were deceased.
How long deceased were
over 10 years.
Okay, so you knew them growing up and knew them well.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so they both were there.
They were both there.
Okay, what did they tell you?
They were the one didn't say much of anything. She was very quiet, and she just watched everything. But the other one was telling me, you have to go back. She was a little more domineering, and I was kind of arguing with her. And she said, you have children, and all of a sudden it was the weirdest feeling, but I started falling backwards through that tunnel, and I was like, no, no, no. And it was like you were thrown down a laundry chute, and it was just like being possessed again. Everything was back. The violence was all back on my body. I think I wrote in my book that it was like being strapped to the outside of a spaceship. That's what you felt like. And then I hear the sounds again. And there was 3 or 4 paramedics working on me, and one on the phone to the hospital, and they're screaming at each other, and the one on the phone is reporting to the hospital, and I hear them screaming, we're losing her pulse again. And I'm like screaming from the inside, what do you mean you're losing my pulse? But I wasn't really screaming, and it was just this turmoil that was going on within my body. And then I went back into the tunnel again.
Then you went back?
Twice.
Okay. Was that time different than the first?
No, that was the same. It was absolutely the most unbelievable experience. It's nothing like, it's hard to even explain, because I don't think you ever have anything that pleasurable here.
You don't really have a point of reference to describe it?
I don't have a point of reference.
Did you see colors there?
Mostly white, mostly the real white, light blues, light greens, but that real calming colors. And yet my eyes had been bad for a while, and lights hurt me, so why I'd like these white lights, I don't know. But a lot of voices, and just this feeling of being loved and surrounded by
Who were
love.
the voices?
I don't know who there were several voices when I went in the second time, and I don't know either one, but those 2 grandmothers the first time arguing, and I wanted to stay. I didn't want to go back to that horrible anaphylactic shock. And then fell backwards down the tunnel again.
Is this experience that you had, going to this place of unconditional love, obviously you left your body in some sense. What impact has this had on your feelings and thoughts about death?
Well, I'm not afraid of that anymore, and I have a hard time I'm not sad for people when they go. It's like you don't really mourn for them. You have to mourn for the people that are going to miss them, because they're not looking back. I came home and I was in therapy for a while going, why did I want to leave my husband and 3 kids? They mean the world to me. And I felt really guilty over that something would surpass that.
You became conflicted about the experience
so much so
you had to have therapy.
I felt terrible
You felt guilty
about it. Yes. Because why did I want to stay there and not come back with them? It's a terrible feeling. But I realized that you don't look back because it's so wonderful. So I don't know, my father died shortly after that, and it was like, I was so happy for him because he lived 80 years and he got to go there. So I have a different view of not to be afraid of. And you know, people are always afraid you don't want to be alone, but you're not alone there. You might be alone on this side, but it doesn't last very long. So I have a different view. It's something I'm not afraid of. And in my last surgery, I said to my husband, if something happens, please don't, I got a good life and I got to do this, and if this doesn't work, it doesn't work. So
you have a confidence and a faith about where you're going to go when you die, and this has changed your perspective about living as well, I would imagine.
And none of us know what tomorrow holds, but today's pretty good.
That's great. Well, it's a fascinating subject. I've heard of different encounters that people have had, and it really is quite incredible. It's an amazing story, that's for sure. Well, we'll be back with more with Ilene Hill right after this. Well, we're back with more with Ilene Hill. And Ilene, throughout this whole ordeal, you've had a wonderful family with you, and tell us what kind of support your family provided to you during this process.
They were with me the whole way. It was hard on them, and it's amazing that I gave a copy of the book to my boys, and this is 5 years later. They were all in high school and doing their thing, and all they cared about was getting the car keys and getting to the lacrosse game. And I think it was hard on them to read what I was going through at the time, because you try to hide things from your kids. And with my husband, he's running a business and he's trying to deal with the kids, and he's dealing with my moods up and down and being angry and brain surgeries. And thank goodness I had the website, because I couldn't burden him with the little things, and I could get with my gripes with them, and we talked and we chatted, and it was really nice. A lot of them were in the same boat. And so, but my husband has been my rock through this whole thing, and he's pretty grounded, and he kept me. He pulled me off the ceiling many times and brought me down and said, just calm down. But I still live in a house with 4 males and a male dog. So I laughed, and I said in my book at one point, I could have been dead on the kitchen floor, and nobody would really know it unless there was no food in the house, or if I would have happened to have fallen on the TV clicker.
That's right.
Because I sometimes think with a football game going on, and I could fuck down in the kitchen floor, and boom, nobody'd know it.
Now you also teach exercise classes.
I do.
Now, how did you get into exercise, and what has that meant to you?
Well, I was taking Pilates for years, and then I started teaching, and I kind of have devised my own program of stretching and balance, and with the basis of Pilates. It works off of the Pilates structure, but we don't work on balance, and it got me through. And you know what? It's our mind and our body, and if you keep them both working together, one takes over when the other one ails. And I taught a high school program for a while, and it was really hard to get those kids. And I finally brought in this chair, and it had a broken leg, and I'm like, would you put your hard drive on here? And they said, no. I go, well, why? It's wobbly and it's unbalanced. And I said, so why? This is your computer. Why would you put it on a wobbly, unbalanced stand? And it got them, and my class went from like 27 kids to 60. And I said, I can't watch what 60 kids are doing. So we had to divide it up over several days. And you know what? We have to be our own advocate, and we're in control of our body. And we have to keep our body as balanced and as stretched out as we can, and as well fed, so that our brain can work the best that it can.
All right. Well, obviously, balance is one of the most important things we have to deal with as we age, since eventually falls are a leading killer of seniors, and maintaining that balance and core strength is a real key to overall physical fitness.
I love my seniors. I work with a lot of the seniors, and I didn't do that before all this, and I've kind of gotten passionate with my seniors. It's really rewarding for me to see their faces when they can get up off the floor or they can do something. I just had a student tonight at the class say, I can cross my legs again. So it's really cool.
Yes, well, no matter what your age, you can still make some improvements, and people need to know that. You can get better if you're struggling in certain areas, even as you're aging.
We have to work at it. And you know what, everybody, I always remind them, everybody's bodies are different. Everybody's shoulders are different. Everybody's spine's different. So you take care of your spine, and if you have to modify anything so that it doesn't hurt, and it's good. I turned 55 on Tuesday. I never thought I'd see 50, and so it's good. It's the whole package.
Yeah, well, you look great, and
Thanks.
After all this, you wouldn't know your age at all. Now in closing, can you tell us where people can obtain copies of your book?
Sure. It is online, and they can go to Life Stinks and Then You Live. There's no periods or dots in there. Or if they go to ilenehill.com, it'll switch them into that site. But they have to go to the Ilene Hill, not in the Yahoo or the Google line. You have to go up to the HTTP line and put it in.
Okay.
They also have it at the libraries. Troy, they read it and accepted it, and Royal Oak has it. And our store in Royal Oak has it at Main Floor Covering on Main Street. And the store in the Troy Community Center, Creative Endeavors, sells it.
Okay. Well, great. Well, we'll make sure we put it on the livelonglivewell.com website, too. So we'll put a link there, because we'd like people to get a chance to see that. Ilene, thanks so much for coming in this evening and sharing your story. You really are an inspiration to me and well, everyone that you come in contact with. And
thank you.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You bet. You bet. And we hope you've enjoyed watching, and we'll see you next time on Live Long, Live Well.